Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. Today we're joined by David Sinclair, who's the co-founder and CEO of 4Freedom Mobile. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you doing?
I am good. Thank you for asking. We're going to get into some fun stuff today. But let's start with the founding story of 4Freedom Mobile. Where did the idea come from? What problems are you solving? And how your vision turned into an actual company and product?
Sure. So, my background, I've spent most of the last 30 years living outside the U.S., a lot of that time managing a systems integration business, selling big projects to government agencies and state-owned companies in emerging markets. And a lot of those projects ended up being with mobile operators and national security agencies around surveillance, how to enable the government to track their population, their citizens, through their mobile phones, and everything from location tracking to monitoring what they're doing on the internet to even turning on their microphone remotely to listen in on face-to-face conversations they were having, all those types of things. And kind of an unusual area to be in, but I was doing this, and I was working in places like Russia and Kazakhstan and Ukraine, Saudi Arabia, Myanmar, those kinds of places, and did that for 30 years, came back to the States in 2019, thinking, finally, I'm going back to the land of the free. I'm no longer going to be surveilled all the time, because I was this foreigner living in these countries doing these national security projects. Of course, they were afraid I was a spy. Mm-hmm. So they constantly, literally physically followed me and things like that. So came back to the States and discovered I was surveilled more in the States than I ever was living abroad. And so I started asking friends about it. Well, aren't you concerned about your privacy? And everybody said they were concerned about their privacy, but nobody knew what to do about it. Like, it's too complicated. You got to have a PhD in cybersecurity to know what to do. And so I had just sold a company that I'd had in Kazakhstan at that point and had a little time and money, and said, okay, you know what? There's got to be a way to make this simple to solve for people. And so I began working on it, and a hobby became a passion. And finally, my wife looked at me and was like, okay, you're spending all your time and all our money on this play project. You need to turn it into a business. And so last year we launched 4Freedom Mobile to be a provider of secure mobile services, software to help secure your mobile phone. And actually last year, later in the year, we launched our own secure phone.
Okay. So very cool. So there's the background and the problem trying to solve. And maybe there's still one or two folks that use payphones or don't have a phone, but I think we're talking to most people.
Yeah. Right. No, absolutely. And if you look at the U.S. market, right, there's, I want to say it's 400 million mobile subscriptions in the U.S. It's like a $300 billion a year business, that space, just the mobile service piece of it, not talking about the phones. So it's a huge market. And some people say, yeah, but how many people really care about preventing people from tracking them through their mobile phones or stopping hackers hacking into their mobile phones? Well, I'd say two answers to that. One is, if you don't care about it, maybe it's something you need to learn a little bit more about, because I think you'll start caring about it once you do. But the other thing is, there's a lot of businesses out there that provide mobile phones to their employees. And in most corporate environments, the single easiest device to hack is the employee's mobile phone. Mm-hmm. And how much business do we do on our mobile phones every day, right? Yeah. We've got tons of corporate confidential information in our email inbox on our mobile phone, right? Not even talking about everything else we do with the phone calls and all that stuff on our mobile phones. So there's an enormous amount of risk out there that people don't recognize. And in order for a company like 4Freedom to be successful, if we capture 1/3 of 1% of the U.S. market share from mobile service providers, we're $1 billion company. Mm-hmm. And that's not even talking about phone sales and other things that we do. Yeah. So
big total addressable market, and what others might call a soft target, right? These mobile phones.
No, absolutely. And one other comment here is that our service actually is available worldwide. So when you sign up for our service, you immediately get free international roaming. So, because we're not tracking what country you're in.
Yeah.
You plop down in a country, you connect to the network. We don't care where you are.
Yeah.
So we actually have between 15 and 20% of our subscribers today are already outside of the U.S.
Okay. Because the countries you were mentioning, mm-hmm. probably not the greatest track record of human rights.
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. It's as an American living there, it was extremely safe to live in these countries because there was kind of an unwritten rule: don't touch the Americans, mm-hmm. otherwise the FBI will parachute in and make our life heck. So it was very safe for me as a foreigner living there. But at the same time, you got to make sure you always stay on the right side of the government if you're a local.
And they have this insatiable desire to track and monitor and keep the dissenters at bay. And I guess that's existed since the dawn of man. But
Oh yeah.
it's a lot easier now. A
Oh
lot more
yeah.
data.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know.
So as we sit here, for those watching, there's two phones. I assume one is your actual phone.
They're both actually my phones.
Okay.
So I've got two different phone numbers that I use. So people get my business card and they'll see two numbers on it. So one of these is an iPhone where I've got our service deployed on it. The other one is my 4Freedom secure phone. And really the main difference between them is, my iPhone it's got all of my traditional Apple apps and all of that sort of thing on it. And it's the phone that I've had the phone number that I've had for years and years and years. The secure phone is built on a de-Googled version of Android. So the hardware is a custom design to make it more hardware secure, prevent zero-day hacks, that sort of thing. The software, it's built on a de-Googled version of Android, which means that I'm not sharing any data with Google, because Android's a Google project. Most people don't realize your average iOS device shares data on you with Apple 52 times a day. Your average Android device shares data on you with Google 14 times an hour. That's over 300 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's an amazing amount of data that these guys are able to collect. And Apple's out there always talking about how Apple's all about privacy. Personally, I don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Apple's about collecting a unique data set.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're the only ones that are able to collect that data from their phones, they're the only ones that are able to market to that population using that data, right? So I really don't think they're about privacy. They're about collecting a unique data set.
Yeah.
With our phone, we basically prevent Apple and Google from tracking you through the operating system, but because it's based on a de-Googled version of Android, you're still able to use all of your favorite Android apps. And we use something called the Aurora App Store, which is a third-party app store that essentially anonymizes you in front of the Google Play Store. So anything on the Google Play Store, you can download onto this phone and use as long as it doesn't require Google services, right? So you're not going to be able to download the Gmail app or the Google Maps app, but our phone comes with an open source navigation app that you can use, and it comes with, an email client that you can use instead of your Gmail. You can connect your Gmail to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You just can't use the Gmail app itself.
Okay.
So
that explains the actual 4Freedom phone.
mm-hmm.
For the iOS one, what are the differences with your phone before or after?
Let's talk about, there's two sets of differences, right? There's the differences in terms of the user experience, and there's the differences in terms of the data that's possible to be collected, right? So our whole focus is preventing as many organizations and individuals as possible from being able to collect any data from your phone, to be able to hack into your phone to steal data, that sort of thing. So our basic service, we ensure that network operators and in many cases, most cases, tech companies aren't able to collect your location, your identity, your communications, your internet activity, or even allowing social media platforms that you may use to collect any data from your phone, right? That's kind of the areas where we're focusing. We've also launched a beta version of our payments platform. So if you look at Cash App and Venmo, they make a lot of money selling people's financial information, their transaction histories, their locations, that sort of thing, who they were with when they were at that restaurant the other night, right? And everybody Venmoed the bill to pay for it. We developed a payments platform, and again, it's still a beta version, so it's kind of clunky. I'll admit, I wrote it myself over about a weekend. But the idea is enabling people to send money to anyone, almost anywhere, without having anybody monitor those financial transactions.
Okay.
All of those capabilities, you'll have access to be able to do all of those things and not get tracked. Use your phone like you want to, but not worry about somebody collecting your data, listening on your communications, whatever. But in terms of the user experience, what's your perceived differences are going to be the biggest difference that most people meet right away is your little green phone and messages apps aren't going to work anymore. And the reason for that is because standard voice technology and standard SMS technology are fundamentally not secure. They require a server in the middle to connect the call, or a server in the middle to collect the message and then deliver it to whoever's going to receive it. Everybody knows the best way to do this stuff is peer-to-peer. Why have a server in the middle, right? And so our service is data only. All the data is encrypted. Everything's encrypted. Your communications are encrypted separately from your internet activity being encrypted. Two different tools in the toolbox that we're using for that. But what that means is you're going to use our communications app for all of your basic phone calls and messages that you're doing. So if I send a message to you, you're not currently a subscriber to 4Freedom, you're going to receive that as an SMS. You're going to send it back to me. I'm going to receive that in-app. And the same thing with phone calls. I'll call you on your phone number. You're going to receive it as a phone call, but I'm going to get it in my app. Now, when two users both have the 4Freedom app on their phone, it's completely peer-to-peer. When it's me calling you, that's not a 4Freedom subscriber today, everything I'm doing is encrypted from my device to our data center. When it gets to our data center, though, we've got to decrypt it and put it out on the regular, telephone network, and that can't be encrypted, right? So it goes out like that. But what happens is if somebody's trying to trace the call back to figure out who are you, where are you located, that sort of thing, that trace gets detonated at our data center.
Okay.
Because we don't have any data on who you are or your location or anything. Because one of our fundamental principles is ignorance by design, which means we don't collect your identity when you sign up. You sign up anonymously with just an email address, and you get a phone number either from us or you port one in. That's the amount of data we've got on you, right? We have a third party that handles all of our payment processing, and they just tell us that this email address has paid for their service. So we don't have any payment information that we collect on you. We don't collect your location, identity, communications. Our plans are unlimited talk and text because we don't want to know who you called. We don't want to track how many minutes you were on the phone. Yeah. Right? And the only reason we track the amount of data you consume is because we've got to pay for the data. Because what we're doing is we don't have our own towers. So we have agreements in place with over 800 network operators around the world. In every country, we've got 2 or more network operators that we're contracted with to use their towers. But what's fundamentally different between us and, say, a Mint Mobile, as an example, right? Mint Mobile buys from T-Mobile, puts their brand on it, and resells it. T-Mobile actually performs all of the back-end work. They deliver all of the messages. They connect all of the calls. They collect all of your data. We actually went through the trouble of not just building apps to put on your phone, which we did build several of those. We actually built our own secure core network. And so the data packet goes to the tower. From the tower, it gets sent to our core network, not to AT&T's core network or Verizon's core network. It gets sent to our core network. And even if it lands in their core network somehow by accident, the only thing they can read is the header, the address saying, oh, send it to 4Freedom's core network, right? And so we're securely connecting all of those calls through our own secure core network that we built.
Okay, very cool. So you guys don't care about the data. You don't care where people are or what they're doing.
Nope.
Why do you reckon others might care if I buy 3 pairs of socks instead of 2, or who I've Venmo'd, or where I am in this world? Why do you think?
Well, so having worked in these emerging markets that, let's say, aren't the most democratic, I've seen firsthand the worst case scenarios where governments literally will use people's data to manipulate their access to information, manipulate their actions, or outright punish people for going someplace they shouldn't have gone or talking about something they shouldn't have talked about, right? And for the most part, we don't see that in a place like the U.S., although there are instances still where that happens today, even in the U.S. What's fascinating, though, is most people think about data collection. Oh, they're giving me more personalized ads. Well, yeah, that's true, but that's really a very small portion of how your data gets used today. So if you look at recently, Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, testified in front of one of the oversight committees in Congress, and honestly, without a whole lot of prompting, he started explaining how banks use data collected from people's mobile phones. And it was fascinating. Something as simple as banks have figured out using behavioral analysis that people who charge their phone every night are a lower risk investment than people who don't. And so they're able to offer lower interest rates to people who charge their phone every night. And so what they're doing is they're buying massive amounts of data from data brokers. And everybody says, oh, yeah, but that data's sold anonymously. If it has your location 24/7, and they buy 30 days worth of data, you've probably spent most of the nights at your home. And your home address is public information.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty easy to de-anonymize supposedly anonymous data. And when you have a computer algorithm that's doing it, it's instantaneous practically, right? So they're able to connect that data to your identity, your social security number, et cetera, when they're analyzing to give you a loan or not.
Mm-hmm.
So insurance companies, they'll track your driving habits to determine what type of rates should they be charging you for your car insurance. It's not just about how many accidents you had. A good example, there was an article published, and I apologize, I don't know the name of the magazine off the top of my head, but essentially it was talking about the rolling stop. So I grew up in an agricultural community, pretty flat, not many trees. You see a stop sign, nobody really stops.
Yep.
You roll up the stop, you look everywhere, okay, and you just keep on going, right?
Yep.
Well, according to the auto insurance company, their behavior analytics, drivers who do rolling stops are less safe drivers. Therefore, they should be charged higher rates for their insurance. And these are just some very simple examples, but it is, and I will tell you that banks and insurance companies, people in the financial services industry in general, tend to be on the bleeding edge of new ways to use these types of data. But really, all companies now, especially with the advent of AI and AI tools that are really easy for business people to configure, that don't require programmers to configure, they're getting really, really good at, okay, how do I take this 10 tons of data I've got and get something useful out of it? And applying analytics around behaviors to be able to then decide, okay, not just what am I going to sell you, but how much am I going to charge you for it? The ones that I love are the Googles and the social media platforms. Take Facebook as a simple example, but Google and Facebook and most of the social media platforms and most websites, frankly, are ad driven. So they have a vested interest in figuring out how to keep you engaged. Well, between 2005 and 2015, Google and Facebook ran a lot of experiments, and they showed in their experiments, and they published the results online, that if they show you rainbows and butterflies and unicorns, you're going to stop looking at your screen. You're going to go away happy and you're going to go do something else. But if they can figure out what your fears, your uncertainties, your doubts are, and they can figure out how to play on those, that drives a negative emotion and that drives engagement. And so when they feel like they're starting to lose you, they're going to show you something that's going to trigger you and drive you getting engaged. And so what that means is that companies like Google and Facebook, because they're advertisers, because they're driven by eyeballs on the screen, they have a vested interest in playing on people's fears, uncertainties, and doubts. So what does that mean? They have a vested interest in fragmenting society along various topics. So why are we so fragmented politically? Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that, unlike prior to the internet, today every one of us comes in constant contact many times a day with organizations who have a vested interest in fragmenting society, putting two opposing views on an issue against one another. And so I personally believe that until people begin to really honestly recognize that they're being played with, that's going to continue to be an issue in the country today. And so it's amazing though you and I will do an internet search and we'll come up with completely different search results, even though we were searching the same term located in the same location, and we're roughly the same age. So why is it we're getting such completely different results? Well, because they're manipulating our access to information. I mean, it doesn't sound nice when I say that, but personally, I've seen the way this gets done. I don't really think it is very nice, right? They have a vested interest in doing this. And so a lot of my theory on this and that led to starting 4Freedom is that, okay, these organizations, their fuel is our data. So let's figure out a way to starve them of our data. Because when I look up a news story, fires in Maui, I want to see the whole story. I want to be able to get the facts and make a judgment myself. I'm an intelligent human being. I'm an adult. I should be able to do that. I shouldn't have to be told, what the correct side of the story is. So I really want to have everybody have the opportunity to see the whole story and make judgments for themselves. I really want to have a situation where you and I go to get health insurance or car insurance or home insurance, and if our behaviors are generally the same, we're going to get the same rates. We're not going to have somebody tracking our every little individual behavior. If you're a smoker and I'm not, okay, there's probably a risk factor there, right?
Right.
But I don't think they need to have every little detail about the food I buy or where I go to eat in restaurants and things like how many times I go to fast food.
Yeah.
That's just not data they need to have. That's my personal information.
Yeah.
So that's the theory.
Yeah. Because this is a whole field of black hat, white hat psychology, all of this. But if you're a DoorDash driver and you want health insurance, they might think, oh, well, geez, how many times can you eat McDonald's in a day, right?
Yeah. But I think a lot of those times you'll be applying for health insurance. They'll ask who your employer is, and they'll say, okay, I work for DoorDash, As
long as there's like some common sense at the end of the tunnel there.
Well, unfortunately, common sense isn't all that common.
Right.
Especially when you start talking about algorithms.
Yeah.
Because algorithms don't think for themselves. right? And even artificial intelligence doesn't really think for itself. It's just application of complex algorithms.
Yeah.
Right. So, especially in the field of data analytics, I don't see a lot of common sense.
Yeah.
People program stuff in, and sometimes they do a great job of it, and sometimes there's some, errors. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal today about white hats that have been hired by the Justice Department to beat up all these new AI platforms to locate bias in the platforms. So they're getting paid by the government to identify areas where there's bias against, and primarily they're focused on racial bias, but there's all kinds of bias that can appear in these platforms, not just racial, and they're finding them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just simply because algorithms probably weren't programmed as well as they could be, right? And you and I both know that happens.
Yeah,
it's humans aren't perfect, and we don't think of everything as we're building the platform to begin with. I mean, that's ask any startup, right? They all make mistakes at the beginning.
Yeah,
we all make mistakes at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like in your initial research of asking people, normal people,
yeah,
you think privacy is important? The answer is probably almost always yes, right?
Actually, it's not.
Not yet. Okay.
It's a generational thing. So we ran a ton of focus groups, but before I ever decided to go and start this company, and literally I hired an agency to go out and run them for me. We ran over 100 focus groups across the U.S. And what we found was, generally speaking, people over the age of 40, privacy is important to them. They have a concept of what privacy is. People under the age of 25 have a completely different understanding of the term privacy. And by the way, let me say to you that this was before Apple came out and launched their whole program around privacy. Because up until then, there wasn't a common understanding of what privacy meant, right? And so, I met a guy at a college in a focus group, and I asked him about privacy, and he said, "Privacy? What's that? I've never had privacy my entire life. My naked baby pictures were out on Facebook."
Yeah.
Right? Generationally, people expect that they have no privacy in the younger generation. Everybody's got a camera on their phone.
Yeah.
Social media is everywhere. People don't expect to have privacy. And so, when I look at the younger audience, it's a completely different conversation that you have. They tend to be much more attached to their phones. They tend to use their phones a lot more than older generations do. But it's not because of privacy that they're concerned about. Very often they're frustrated about their data being collected, not because they're concerned about privacy, but they're frustrated that Google or Facebook or whoever's collecting their data is making a bunch of money on selling their data and not sharing that money with them. That's what we found in our research. Now, a big thing changed when Apple spent $120 million promoting Apple equals privacy, because they helped, through their big advertising campaign, create a common understanding of what does privacy means. Privacy, in the Apple terminology, means apps on my phone aren't able to collect my data. Well, that's what they say it means, but in fact, every app on my iPhone is collecting data on me. The difference is between an Apple and iOS operating system and an Android operating system is how much access does that app developer have to other data going on outside of the app inside the phone, right? So that's really the differences there. Generally speaking, an iOS operating system, it prevents a lot of the access that maybe you could get as a developer into the Android operating system.
Yeah.
But it's not that dramatic a difference. The network operator is still tracking you 24/7. They know what time you woke up this morning because they're accessing the gyroscope in your phone. So they know what time you picked your phone up off your nightstand, right?
Yeah.
So, it all depends.
There you go. Because it's interesting, because like at first blush, if you had to make a couple of assumptions about your company, it'd be, I can guess it might be libertarians and maybe some preppers there, and just a little bit older, a little bit grumpier. But on the inverse, right, like what you talked about, these focus groups, is they might not care, but they resent being monetized.
Yeah.
So you can hit them both, right? Like you've got a big market.
Well, it's interesting. So me personally, I'm libertarian. I very much believe government should be out of our lives as much as possible, but I also believe corporations should be out of our lives as much as possible, because again, I've worked inside big corporations and seen what they can do with this stuff, right? That being said, my company has no political standing at all, and we get people from all sides. So some of my earliest subscribers, I had a couple people sign up for my service when we were still building our website and accidentally published a page on it. Within 24 hours, we got 2 new subscribers, and they were people who were very involved in the Occupy Wall Street side of things. So the very far left people, as well as people on the right that are concerned about big tech. Anybody who's concerned about big tech, big corporations, big government working together, who are concerned about individual liberty, individual freedom, these are all people who are interested in this type of a service. In terms of our marketing, we did initially focus a lot on, we kind of said, okay, our target market is libertarian-leaning men between the age of 25 and 45. But what we found out when we actually began looking at who's signing up for us, it was everybody. I mean, there is a broad spectrum of people, of ages, ethnicities. I was talking with a group the other day that are in the LGBTQ space, pushing policies around that. And they were all very interested in the service. For people who are in the LGBTQ community, this would be great because it means, makes us safer.
Yeah.
Because they're highly sensitive to people tracking them and following them. So, it's what's amazing to me is I built something based on my own personal experience, not really knowing who my target audience was going to be. So maybe I didn't do it the right way. The startups are supposed to be done. And what I discovered, though, is there's a piece of this that's interesting to almost everybody.
Yeah.
It all depends on how you look at it. Now, I will tell you that the vast majority of Americans today are pretty much asleep on this topic. It's not a priority topic. My data getting tracked, digital privacy or digital freedom, however you want to call it, isn't a high priority topic for the vast majority of Americans today. But that's okay, because I don't have to be successful with the vast majority of Americans. There is a target audience out there who's aware of the issue. People who are already using VPNs, people who are already using encrypted messaging like Signal and these types of things, right? Signal's been hacked. Okay, so what are all those people who use Signal going to do now that the FBI and NSA and others have figured out how to hack into Signal messages, right? They're getting presented in court cases as evidence. Your Signal communications with somebody. Okay, if I want to have privacy, I might not be doing anything bad at all. I just want to have privacy, right? What do I use? Well, come talk to 4Freedom, right? So there's a large number of people out there who are looking at that. Or another example, people who are worried about getting their phones hacked, or businesses worried about their phones getting hacked, right? A part of our service is we have an app that is an AI-driven anti-malware, anti-spyware, antivirus type of app. Essentially, you drop it on your phone, and it does all those things to your phone, monitors your phone like an expert user would have normally be monitoring battery utilization and network utilization, those sorts of things, which are key indicators that somebody is using spyware or malware or something to pull data out of your phone and then shut that down, right? So it's an AI-driven app, and it's included in our service, and it prevents people from hacking into your phone.
Yeah.
So,
because it's all fun and games until that happens, right? There's a lot of pain points.
Yeah, there are. And identity theft is a huge issue.
Yeah.
And stealing people's identities, or even just stealing basic stuff like your social media passwords through your mobile phone, unfortunately is becoming easier and easier every day. And so that's really, we have an app called Safe Social Media, where you can access any social media platform you want, but that social media platform isn't going to be able to collect any data from your phone. And all of your interaction with that social media platform is encrypted. So through our Safe Social Media app, we're allowing people to use social media without social media using them. That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully won't get hackers stealing their social media login information as well, right?
Yeah. You're taking the fuel from the fire, to your point.
I'm trying to. That's our goal.
Yeah.
People should be able to live free from all of this tracking and hacking and data theft that's happening every day.
Yeah.
Right? You shouldn't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Another example, I apologize, but a lot of moms are concerned about their kids' online habits, right? You have a lot of issues. Moms concerned about behaviors, not just moms, dads too, parents are concerned about predators engaging with their kids online, right? The vast majority of social media platforms, what do? They immediately hook into your phone and they present to anybody who looks what your location is right now, right? So if your kid's on Snapchat he's probably broadcasting his location to whoever engages with them on Snapchat. Your kid's on whatever social media platform your child likes, their location is probably being broadcast. Do you really want a predator knowing where your kid's located? Right? And so we see, I had a woman who's got 4 kids in North Carolina, and she's like, I'm buying one of these for every one of my kids because I don't want other people to be able to track where they are.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, great.
It's pretty commonsensical there.
It is. It is. But, it's like I said, anybody who's sensitive to the topic of people getting tracked online or random people having access to your information online, they hear about our service and like, oh, wait a minute, I should be looking at this, right? Now, a lot of people are under a 3-year contract with AT&T or whatever, and they can't get out of it, and eventually they'll get out of it and they'll come and looking and talking to us, right?
Right.
So I kind of say, okay, we've been around a year. It's been just over a year since we launched, and we're doing pretty well growth-wise, but I think it's something that's just going to grow over time as awareness builds, because you and I watch the news. Every night there's a new story about some company got hacked or some data issue happened or some social media platform is blocking this, or there's all these sorts of, the news cycle is really my biggest demand generation tool in terms of creating awareness of the issue. The biggest issue I face today is awareness that our service exists. Most people don't know we exist.
Right.
So I think over time that'll improve. Yeah. And hopefully this podcast will help.
Yeah, absolutely. I get the sense that there's a lot of pokers in the fire and a lot of things that you guys will build and implement. What is the roadmap for the next year and a half? And ultimately, like, when will you know that your original goals and objectives have been met?
Well, my original goal and objective in starting this was to give people the tools they need to protect their privacy. Give them the tools they need to be able to take back their digital freedom, right? That's really the goal. Yes, I want it to be profitable because I want it to be able to feed itself. I don't want to have to go out and get outside investors. We're completely bootstrapped. I funded this out of my own pocket from the company I sold in 2019. We don't want to ever have to take outside investors because I don't want to have to deal with outside pressure to collect people's data and sell that data, right? Which in the vast majority of cases in tech companies, that's a big piece of the business, is collecting and selling people's data or collecting the data and using it to sell to them, right? We really don't want to do that, right? So my primary goal, and when am I going to know that I've achieved that goal? Well, I think we've achieved a lot of that goal already, but we're constantly looking at, okay, how do we close this gap, right? Because you've come from a bit of a cybersecurity background yourself, and you know about attack vectors, right? There's all kinds of different vectors we're getting attacked every day. So we've addressed encrypting people's communications. We've addressed preventing network operators like Verizon and AT&T from being able to track your location and identity and your communications, right? We've addressed preventing people from tracking your internet activity, your app usage, right? We've now, last month, we launched the Safe Social Media app. Now we can protect people when they're using their social media platforms from having those social media platforms suck all the data out of their phone, right?
Yeah.
But there's still tons of these other vectors. And one of the things that I'll tell you, though, is that I'm not the guy who says everything we do has to be built in-house. I very much believe we will never have the money to invest as much as Google or Facebook will in tracking technology. So I love partnering with other companies, and there's a lot of companies. There's literally thousands of companies out there doing little niche solutions to prevent things from getting collected or hacked or that sort of thing. Password managers, ad blockers, all those sort of things. I would love to partner with those types of companies to embed their technology into my offering. And if any of you are out there, come and talk to us. I'm very happy to do that. So I think our roadmap today is really focused on increasing our subscriber base. We don't really want to focus on developing any new technologies today. Increasing our subscriber base. One of the strategies we have for increasing our subscriber base, within the next month, we're planning to launch family plans, where today every individual who signs up is required to have their own plan, their own account and everything. We're actually going to be doing family plans where you can essentially add any number of lines you want, and each additional line is going to be just $10 more a month. So those will launch within the next month, and I think that's going to give us a broader opportunity, because a lot of the phone plans that are bought today are bought by families.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the mother is very often the decision maker. And so if we can open ourselves up and have a price competitive offering that gives all these added value of the security features, I think that's going to help us a lot. So that's really our focus, is growing that subscriber base. We have actually already developed the technology to give people a more secure version of like a Zoom, right? You don't want to have the Chinese collecting your conversations and or looking in your notebook through when you're using Zoom. You don't want to have Microsoft being able to do that if you're using Teams. We've developed the technology to be able to have a platform that'll support a video conference with up to 1,000 users at the same time on the video conference. Unfortunately, that requires a huge investment in infrastructure to support that. And so until we get a much better cash flow, we don't have the cash to go and invest in that massive amount of infrastructure. But as soon as that happens, as soon as we hit that cash flow level, we can afford to do that, we're definitely going to launch that type of an offering, because it's a very easy add-on to our existing communications capability. You know, just to have, instead of doing a one-to-one call with somebody, you're going to be able to do a video conference with 1,000 people joining in, have links to share with them to join in, just like you do with a Zoom call today.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's kind of the roadmap where we're going. But more than anything, I think we're focused on growing the subscriber base, which means finding partners, finding people who are in the privacy space that would love to partner with us and work together. You know, I spent a lot of time working in Central Asia. And in Central Asia, the business culture is very, very interesting because they're very tribal societies. So the first thing that two Kazakhs do when they meet each other, one of the very first things they do is figure out how closely related are they. Because there's a very strong etiquette in terms of how you're supposed to conduct yourself with somebody, depending on how closely related you are, particularly in business negotiations. How flexible are you willing to be, right? You're not allowed to be mean to closer relatives, right? And so one of the things that they have there is that if you become successful, you should share your success with, you know, as many people as possible. Bring everybody along with you. And so one of the things that I learned there is when you build a big project and you bring in a lot of partners into that project, everybody should be able to share in the benefits of that project, the financial benefits of that project. And so, you know, I'm very open to partnerships. I'm very open to having a very easy financial relationship with my partners, because, you know, what's the expression about a tide rising causes all the boats to rise? I apologize, I'm massacring the expression, but the idea is that everybody should be able to share in the benefit from that. And I honestly believe that over the next 2-3 years, privacy is going to grow as more and more of a top of mind issue. As people begin realizing how their data is getting used, frankly, at times against them. And I think that, you know, my goal is to create this one simple solution. Everybody can come to us, pay one subscription fee that's kind of similar to what you're paying for your mobile service today anyway, and get everything you need to take back your digital freedom. That's my goal. And if I can bring in other partners and put their offerings through my service, love to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think that is a very noble goal, and what you and your team are doing is a lot better than my idea of everyone having a couple of carrier pigeons. I think you'll scale and be a lot more successful. Thank you so much, David. I've learned a ton. I'm sure we could have gone for hours with this one, but kudos to you and your team for like sticking your nose in and trying to like tackle a big problem.
I
really
appreciate
it.
Thank you very much for having me on.
You bet.